Welcome back to the Unique Minds of the Okanagan. I'm Rob O'Day, and we are on location in Kelowna with Rob McLaren, a multi-instrumentalist from Kelowna. How you doing?
Yeah, good.
It's good to have you.
Yeah,
Thanks for being on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So let's get started, and basically, why don't you let everybody know who you are, where you're from, and how you became such a creative musician.
That's probably worth an hour in itself. Rob McLaren, as you mentioned. I'm from a little town called Tofield, Alberta. I had one of those weird childhoods where most of my life was spent there, but my dad lived out here in the Okanagan. And then I kind of like live with him during the summer and go back home during the rest of the time. And when I graduated, I moved out here just because there was clearly way more going on. I don't know, with being a musician, I don't know, I've kind of feel like music has kind of always possessed me. Like there's like these weird moments that my mom always brings up, like when I was a kid, whenever I'd see live music, I would become entranced and be taken over by a spell. She loves telling this story of like, we were at West Edmonton Mall on Halloween, and there was a band playing in West Ed, and I was dressed as a little bunny, and I lost it, and I started dancing, and everyone made a circle around me, and there's just this like little 2-year-old doing this frantic 2-year-old dance, just entranced by the music, and like it kind of takes me over. And I've started to kind of understand that it's like not really a choice. It's hard to come to terms with that.
Yeah.
It's hard to, I think we all want that sovereignty. Like this time of year, I always go through that thing where you, as a Canadian musician, songwriter, you're on the road less in the winter. And it's kind of that time to recenter, refocus, look at those hard things, those hard challenges that were your limitations during the summer. And, but you also slow down and, you have time with your family and your friends, and you have time to reflect. And that's usually always the time that like, I'm like, why am I doing this? Like it's very hard. I have 2 small children, and, I can't help but think like, it's so much better just being at home with them than to, drive 2 towns over to play to 6 people, and I've known so many musicians that give themselves, so many artists that give themselves that permission to step away. And it kind of reminds me of like, religious people. They always say like, oh, why do people only pray to God when their life is bad, right? And I've learned my lesson as a musician and as an artist. You can't.
Yeah.
There's a conviction there. You don't have a choice. Mm-hmm. And I've tried to put it down. I've tried to step away from it, because it gets really disheartening,
Yeah.
And the project that I'm currently in, the Cavernous, it's there's been a long running thing with me. I feel I've done everything from like folk music to electronica to heavy metal, but everything that I do, and you probably can testify to this because we've known each other so long, but everything that I do is this subversion, right? It's metal, but it's not just metal. It's folk, but it's not just folk.
Yeah, there's always a Rob McLaren feel to whatever you're in.
Well, I think that there's a way to be very specific about what you're doing and still be conserve what's great about that. Mm-hmm. Like one of my guiding lights is Slayer, and Slayer is metal.
Yeah.
But they're still very much Slayer. There's no one that sounds like Slayer. Slayer is Slayer, right?
Yeah.
but they're still heavy metal. Whereas I think there's that other thing, more like a David Bowie, you know, where it's like, you're not just, you know, like David Bowie approached every album as a different character, right? And like, not just that, but he dipped his feet into like musicals and, you know, movies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'm a little more of a David Bowie. And so whenever I come at whatever I'm doing, I'm always trying to find, as you mentioned, that Rob McLarenism that is usually a subversion. And I've realized like I get so down and out because my projects take so long to connect with people. Like I have to just really grind at it for people to be like, oh, that's what you're doing.
There's a spiritual element to the music that you write and the bands that you've been in.
Yeah.
There's artists, and like you said, there's bands.
Yeah.
And then there are artists.
Yeah.
Musicians and artists are on a different plane, and I think of what you deliver when, not only with what you write, but how you perform.
Yeah.
I can say hands down, you're probably one of the only artists that's ever like captivated me in a trance state while watching you perform. Right?
Well,
like it's just
that
the
means a
music you wrote
Wow.
was something else.
Yeah. That means a lot coming from you. I think we have that similar David Bowie thing where we can't stay in our lane. Whereas I think you're a little more of a method actor. You know what I mean? Like you get when you get something in your jaws, it totally,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Whereas like, I'm a bit more of a Philip Seymour Hoffman, you know, where it's like, it's always Phil, but he can play so many different characters, but it's still Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah.
Whereas you're more like a Daniel Day-Lewis, where you could like, or who was in Bill Skarsgård? Everyone's talking about him with the new Nosferatu. Anyways, but like you can really get into your character and like lose yourself in your character.
Yep.
Whereas like I'm like this broad, and I also appreciate the spiritualism that you mentioned, because I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Like I'm I guess what you would call an agnostic at this point in my life. I don't want to, I want to keep the humility of saying, I don't know, because who does, right?
Yeah.
Like as you get older, like claiming to know that you know anything.
The older you get, the less you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a freedom in that.
Yeah.
But there's just something about music that, you know, Hendrix said when he was asked what his religion was, he said music. And I feel that to my core.
Yeah.
I feel a conviction to it because it's the only thing that makes everything else make sense. You know what I mean? Like love doesn't make any sense until you listen to Leonard Cohen talk about it. And then you're like, and there's this uncanny thing that you feel like, I always felt that, but I never knew how to say it until you said it, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I love about music, is there's this uncanny thing happening. Because like when you write a song, or when you, whatever it is, if you start with like a guitar riff, or like lately I've been really into synthesizers, and you don't necessarily know what it is you're working on. You're just like, it's happening to you, right? And then later on, once all the pieces are added, then you get to go, oh, that's what it is. So you have this experience where you're the witness, and then you retell that story on stage and through recording, and then those people have that experience, you know, and it's all out of our control. And so that leaves me with this really kind of, it feels mythical, it feels spiritual. And when I'm on stage, and when you notice, I really appreciate that you notice that about me, I am really trying to like surrender, you know, and like, I'm not just playing the part, you know, like this is happening to me as well.
Yeah.
And that's what's hard about being a musician, and what gets really grinding, and what people don't understand about it is like, when you're playing, like, I cannot imagine being one of these bands that broke in their 20s.
Yeah.
And playing those songs. Like, could you imagine, like,
30 years down the road, still playing the same
still
song.
playing that song, you know? I mean, all the power to them. And, like, to make something that lasts that long, great.
Yeah.
But, like, if I had to go on stage and get in that mindset of a song I wrote when I was 22 years old and do it sincerely, I might have to, like, just manufacture a character, you know what I mean, to make that work. And there's an artistry in that I totally revere as well. But something that I'm looking for is just that collision, that moment of, like, you know, like, this is real. And yeah, I don't know. I think that might be one of the reasons why I struggle so hard to get things off the ground. Is I think there's all these levels of local artistry that I've come to have a deep reverence for, whether it's that band. Like, I love watching a band take their first steps. It's like, that's the best. Because they have all these expectations. And but the fun of, and the real journey of being an artist is ego death, right? It's realizing that you constant, like, if you want to keep yourself engaged with it, you have to be engaging on a different level. Like, you have to be present. You can't just get up there. Like, that's the thing. Like, so many bands will, like, look at a band like, say, Nirvana, like, oh, that looks so, he's just playing 4 power chords. There's nothing to that. But then you realize, like, what that dude did to find that spirit that's behind those 4 chords. There's a special sauce happening there that I've lived my whole life wondering.
I think that's the point of an artist, though. Because I think all major revolutions in the last 100 years were led by musicians. In the sense that you had the hippie movement, which was led by music. Everyone was one love. And then you have through the 80s where everyone was partying, and you had, you know, a disco era. So, like, there's the evolution of humans. It coincides with music.
Yeah.
In such a weird way that musicians can lead you down the right way or the wrong way more than I think most. Like,
look at the Kendrick Drake beef.
Yeah.
That is I was encapsulated by that this year because it was it's exactly what we're talking about. It's one person being like, you know, like, let's just have fun and be, you know, kind of on the surface about this. And then one person was like, no, there is a deep tradition of revolution in this. And you cannot just play these characters.
No.
You have to be you.
Yeah.
You know, and of course I was on the Kendrick side, but ultimately I kind of understand. You can't have a Kendrick without a Drake. You can't have a Batman without a Joker. Yeah. And so I do have this reverence, and I've learned this over time, because there was a time when I was very cynical, and I would just, oh, they're not even trying, you know, they're just getting up there. But then, you know, I've seen these same people that I accused of being just encapsulate something that was lost in a specific genre, you know, and they held it while everyone else was moving on, and they were like, no, this is what this is. Like, I even have that, like, in my bluegrass days, I would get very offended when artists would refer themselves as bluegrass if they had a drummer. That's a no. That's a line in the sand for me as a bluegrass musician when I was one. You can't, the thing that makes bluegrass is there's no percussion. The percussion is in the syncopation between the 5
musicians.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the magic of it. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like at the age that I'm at, it's just like, I feel like I understand it all. It leads, it leads to more questions and understanding how I fit in. But I'm getting very tired, and just with everything that is called upon me in my life, as a caregiver who worked through the pandemic, as a first, responder, as a father of 2 small children, and as somebody who's making really weird, abstract electronic music. I'm exhausted. Like these things, like when people are like, you do it because it's so much fun, right? Like, no.
It's more of a who you are. Just you can't stop it.
Yeah, there's a conviction. I think about a couple of different lines. I think about Charles Bukowski's line, like, find something you love and let it destroy you, right? Like, that's my life. Like, the things that I love are openly, like my children are literally stepping on me.
Yeah.
And like,
No, it's true.
Dad, and like,
Yeah.
my kid, like, like kicked me in the stomach so hard that I like fell over the other day.
Yeah.
And, like, but there's this thing that happens, like it's, yeah, it just gets, I'm tired. I'm really, this time of year when like, I feel like I should be resting, and I'm emailing people about shows that
For next year. And
just like,
yeah.
and even like, Christmas, like Christmas is like this beautiful thing again. There was a couple years where it wasn't. But with small children, I mean, it goes back to that root of
Yeah,
what
it's
it was.
weird.
It's magic again,
Yeah,
right?
it is. Like this year was probably the first. This year and last year, probably the first 2 Christmases that since I was a kid, I was like, the magic was back.
And you get to watch it from the other side, and you're like, oh, wow. But you don't realize there's like a tired parent.
Yes. And then you start to relate to your parents.
Yeah, and isn't that
weird.
great about having children is like, like that was the true test of adulthood, is having kids. And growing up, you just find so much fault in your parents. And then you realize there was this person that was there at every beck and call to make sure that I became a person.
Yeah,
And no matter how flawed they were there.
Yeah. Well, they
You
were
wouldn't
learning
be
too,
here,
right?
You wouldn't be here if they weren't there,
Yeah.
And like, yeah.
We never stop learning, and that's the one thing. Like as we're growing, I don't think we realize is like our parents were in our position, just learning still how to cope with the world and how to move through it as it changes.
And
like
putting those unneeded things, like you were talking a little bit before, like, oh, I'm so worried about where I am in life, and it's like,
I have this weird like complex in my head lately where it's like it's actually been an inspiration to write again, because it's something I need to get out and in front of me so I can see it. But it's the older I get, like, should I be walking away from my dreams as a musician because it's what I love and have done since I was 11. I've been performing since I was 12, so I'm like 23 years deep of performing.
I think we got to make inventory though, because here's the thing is, like, when we were coming up, like, there was no interviews, there wasn't even zines, there's nothing really online. There were a couple venues, and yet we thought we were going to be the next big thing. And now there's all the, like, I don't remember these music festivals like Armstrong Metal Fest and Massive, and like there's all these opportunities and all these like places that we think we can get to, and like if we get to like opening for this bigger regional band, and we think there's these plateaus that don't exist. They're not. We think like, oh, once I play this venue with this band at this time, every time I come back to that town, it's going to be packed. Nope.
No.
It's
never guaranteed.
And so, like, we have to really monitor our visions of what success actually mean, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like, we have to, what is it? What will make you fall asleep at night and be okay with what you did with your time? And being someone that makes music that is always subversive and throws people off and isn't invited to the festival and then like it's backed by a loudmouth like me who doesn't who should learn to be quiet and just, and I'm learning as I get older, like no one needs to hear what I think. Like,
I think everyone has their voice.
yeah.
It's just, it's also, we live in a time where like you say anything and you can get in trouble for it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's easier to be quiet than it is to speak
Well,
your mind.
I think the microphone is on louder, so you have to be aware that there's more people listening, and that those people might not be in a place to want to hear what you want to say.
Yeah.
And so this cycles back to my whole being like kind of a villain by accident. But you know, it's really hard for me, and I have to always take inventory. Like, why am I doing this? If I'm like, I don't have any expectation of any sort of grandeur. Now I'm realizing that it's more about. I think a lot of people want to jump on what other people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
They see success and they're like, I want to be a part of that. I want to go to that. I want to play that venue. I want to play this. I think the smart thing to do is to build especially when you're a person like me that does so many things that are kind of outside of the box a little. You have to build your own steps. You have to build your own way out of the canyon. You know, you can't rely on the ladders that have been set out for other people, you know.
Like we've touched base on a lot of it, but what in your time has been the biggest challenge for you as a musician personally, and what lessons did you learn from it?
Yeah, I think I kind of have been talking about it this whole time. Like, it's just like,
more or less to be with the band. Sorry, I should rephrase
No,
it.
as an artist, if you want to go against the grain, don't expect it to be easy.
No.
And I thought I thought being innovative was an automatic in. Mm-hmm. It's not. It's not at all. In fact, it's probably at your detriment. There's going to be people who come up behind you that you've blazed the trail for that have a lot easier of a time.
Yeah.
You know, like, and it's not even you that blazed the trail. Like, you're just a footnote in something much bigger, but and barely a footnote. But for me, there's this cycle that I go through. I start a band. Everyone's pumped on what we're doing because we're doing something different. Okay, and everyone gets excited, and you get out there and everyone's not on board yet. Mm-hmm. You're flopping. You're like, everyone's not ready for what you're doing, and you're not even ready because you don't really know what you have yet. It was like when we're talking about that formless thing that you're playing with, creating.
Yeah.
You know, even to present it, you have to learn how to present it. It's not just about making the thing. Okay, how do we show this to people where they get it? So, you know, and then you get to this point where, okay, maybe you're starting to get attention and you're starting to learn how to communicate it properly. And, you know, finally you release the album. That's always the tombstone. Because once you get to the point where you're releasing the album, you're so cooked.
Yep.
You're beyond cooked. You've been fighting with your bandmates and internally figuring out how to get this thing through the gates. Yeah. And into people. And then you finally get it there. And once you're on that stage, you're just like, I really wish I was at home right now. Like, every time I get to that point, the band dissolves. All of us are just like, whether it's me or all of it. And then you've got that impossible process of being like, okay, do I start this all over again with different members, you know, and then it's the ship of Theseus. Do you know that old fable? The ship of Theseus is this old story, I guess, parable, if you will. I don't know if I'm using that word right, but it's like there's a boat and you have to replace certain boards because they get worn out. And eventually you have changed every single board in that boat slowly over enough time.
That is not the same boat.
Is it the same boat? That's the question. Okay. That's the question you have to ask. Is it the same boat, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if it's the same boat if it's doing what it's meant to, right?
That's the thing, is I don't think there's actual words that can describe what
Yeah.
you feel
Yeah.
when you're in that state.
Yeah.
Like I've tried to express it many times, and maybe in a different language, not in English though. I don't think there is a word that can describe the feeling you get when you're in that spiritual zone,
Yeah.
and you're linked, and you're linked in with your band, and there's no one making eye contact, and
Yeah.
no one's talking, and then all of a sudden you open your eyes and there's this euphoric sense that just comes over you, especially when you're with that group that just you click with.
And that's what's hard about this Ship of Theseus thing is you go through this thing, you have that experience, you tell the story of that experience, which is a whole other journey of itself, and then you get to the end. And this is like when you look at album cycles of like huge bands, how do you recreate that moment?
Yeah.
Lightning in a bottle, man. Like it's, and that's why, that's one thing that I really, once again, I take inventory of the fact that thank God I didn't break when I was 22 and I'm still playing those songs, because like that's afforded me the chance to just, I've been able to reinvent myself every couple years and find new people and name it a whole new thing and have a whole new journey. And I am, as hard as it is, that's the silver lining is, okay, where am I at now? What is the expression that's going to get me there now? You know, and that like, okay, I'm not, I'm not making my living off of being a musician. I don't think the few times that I've had that experience, I didn't even like it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the few times in my life where my paycheck was how well I played, I started to really not like music anymore. Mm-hmm. And that was such a revelatory moment for me, because I think that's why someone like Kurt Cobain gave it all back, It's like, oh, this didn't make me happy.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the point of music. It's not to get to the zenith. It's that, it's so cliche, but it's the journey.
Yeah, it is. And that's what I meant earlier about when you love something and you're passionate about it, it's different when you have to turn it into that business.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I took the last year off booking and festivals and shows. Like,
I noticed that. I've been meaning to pick your brain.
Yeah, everyone asked me, and it's because I almost lost my family because of putting so much time and energy into helping our community that my community was almost taken from me. And that was a huge eye opener for me. So like now the kids are older and I can do it, but I want to do it differently. I don't want to like book myself every weekend out in Alberta and all these things. Like I would rather just play big festivals. And that to me is way more of an experience, because like getting to hang out with the boys for a weekend and watch like 100 bands versus struggling to go to 50 different shows.
I actually picked that up off of you. You were starting all of these like festivals almost, right? Or these like, and I was like, that's a great idea. Like have multiple stages, do it every couple, but
it just makes it easier.
Yeah, and then
instead of booking 10 shows over 3 months.
If I may play devil's advocate for a minute, the problem is you can't assume that you're going to be at that A-game zenith that you want to be when you get in front of a festival size audience if you haven't played those
build-up shows.
Yeah, exactly. You need to do those shows that you're allowed to kind of you figure out what's going on, right? With those new songs, like where do they go in the set? What, like you have to figure that out before you're playing in front of 200 people, or else it's going to get ugly.
Yes.
Like for the biggest learning curve for the Cavernous is gear. You've seen it. Like it's just a mammoth of gear.
I think it's for a lot of bands. Yeah. I think that's one thing that people don't consider is their setup and teardown time. and being a promoter, it's one thing that I'm like, I can get 18 bands to 15 minutes. Boom. In between, we got music going, right? And that's just my team. For me, I think we can make the scene the way we wanted it to be, because we are the top dogs now. We have that ability to book the shows we want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The
I
lack of
definitely-
venues is the hardest thing.
I see what you're pointing to, and I 100% agree. I definitely put my hand where my heart is, or my heart where my hand is, if you will. Like going back to like helping out. Like some people they've never said it to me, but I know they're confused. Like, why do you like book all these like
New bands.
new bands that aren't necessarily that good? It's like because
They need a chance.
they're going to get good.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And even if they don't, they still need a place to play, and that's where my heart is.
Yeah.
But I think, don't you worry about putting too much pressure on yourself? Like, we shouldn't look at it as what our, now we get to make it our vision. Like, I feel almost like we're working in a factory, and like we're like the foreman, like, oh no, machine 2's down, somebody better get over there and Glenn, bring your tools. You know what I mean? It's not,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we're not, when you want to talk top dogs, when you get to the top dogs, they're just people who care about money. Like,
No, I don't mean like top dog as in like,
but
you're the ones that everyone's opening for. I mean, top dog is like, you're the old ones of the scene who have watched it change.
Yeah.
And like, you can be the one who changes the faults that have happened. Like,
Yeah.
where, like you said before, like metal bands are just playing with metal bands.
Yeah.
My biggest thing was playing multiple genres in on
Yeah.
bill.
Yeah.
Because you don't just put heavy metal blasting people right at the beginning of the night.
Right.
You want to drive people out the building, go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah.
But you want to build up
Right.
with the liquor drinking.
Right.
Like you start off a little softer,
Right.
get a little more punk rock, and by
yeah.
the end of the night, everyone's a little drunk and they want to hear metal.
Right.
That's a good show.
Yeah.
For me, it's like it's dynamics, and
Right.
like the scene itself has so much different music that just booking yourself with the same bands every weekend, Denenzies, is not gonna do anything. You kind of gotta branch out, and that's where it becomes hard. It's like we don't have venues, and if you don't want to travel, how do you get out there?
Yeah.
And then that's where social media is a whole other element, right? Because
Right.
I have a lot of friends who don't perform, but they're massive online. There's something there. I'm a very personal person. Like I like having. Sounds really stupid and probably really bad, but I love when the set's over and I'm packing up my guitar.
Okay.
I'm sweaty head to toe. I'm panting because I just scream my lungs out, and someone comes up and hugs me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sweaty, and they're like, I don't care.
Yeah.
And they hug me,
Yeah.
and they're just like, I want to be here in this moment. And I'm like,
They don't want the moment to stop.
yeah, and that to me is way more than a million views.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like,
That's where it's not going to work for guys like us.
that's where it's like, I've got to find that middle ground for how to make that connection.
But maybe that's not your lane, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the cool it's such a weird thing nowadays, because when we were coming up, we all assumed that the point was to get to the zenith, to become the cultural ambassador, whatever.
Yeah.
But there was no steps. There was no clear indication on how to get there. We were like, start a band and book a show. Like, that's as far as we got. Right? And nowadays, there's so many places you can jump and hats you can wear, and there's so many different paths, but there is no more cultural zenith to get to.
No.
So it's just like you're jumping
unless you're
in.
pop artist. But yeah, like,
or I think the electronic and hip hop thing still has it, but
yeah, it's like for bands though, like there's no more Rolling Stones.
I'm gonna bring up something here that may be contentious. Whenever I bring it up, it's weird for people, and because you're a guitar player, I don't want to. But I think what has killed rock and roll is the guitar. It birthed it. It gave it birth. It gave it life. It made it what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same thing that murdered it. Because and the reason why I'm in the Cavernous, it's an anti-guitar band because of the experiences I had through so many years.
Mm-hmm.
Is I wouldn't last in many bands that did this, but it was so rare to find players that didn't. Is if you, in rock and roll music, whether you're Bob Dylan or Eddie Van Halen, if you hold the guitar, you call the shots. And as somebody that was always relegated to bass, or I've played 100 different instruments, but I always found that so weird, because I always came to the floor with 1,000 ideas, and I looked at it as like like I love that communion of like working together and like, okay, what do you think we should do, and like fighting it out and really grinding something into a, you know, something that you can all, something that you can all go, I built that, you know, whereas like so many metal bands that or not just metal bands, even folk bands, even every genre I've been in, if there's a guitar player in the band, it's this unwritten law that they're boss. And and that's why the Cavernous is what it is, because I need that fluidity to be like, to hear somebody play something and be like, oh, I hear drums and I've got a thing to do drums. Oh, I hear a bass line, you know, and then they can do that for me, and back and forth, right? And I need that freedom to not just be like, I look at it almost like a producer, you know, like a producer is looking at the whole song, whereas like when you come from a song just from what you're doing, like the frequency spectrum that you're playing along with, it's hard to really see the entire vision. You're just thinking about what you're doing.
And I think that's the difference between, like you said, like as a guitar player, like I don't like to be spotlight. I don't understand that. Like I feel super scared on a stage, but I love to put myself on a stage to feel scared, because it's this weird love. Like, it's this weird addiction that I have of just like wanting to close my eyes on that moment, because I'm scared of all the people staring at me, but I want to present them this music. And
the trick is they're not actually there. You gotta like, you can't win them over until you're at peace with yourself, right?
And like the 5 minutes before I step on stage is like always the worst. You'll always notice you'll never find me. I'm off in a corner, like hyperventilating, and like
that's interesting.
I have this weird like I just like need like 10 minutes to myself before a set, just to like reel everything in, and then hop on stage and throw down as hard as possible. I
don't get stage fright. I get gear fright. My anxiety is getting my.
It's gonna break down tonight. Murphy's Law.
Well, I mean, I don't know when the last time you saw the Cavernous was, but it's just too much. Like we have too much going on, and it's like, it's always a half an hour changeover, and there's so much like, and me pulling at chords and like not being organized yet again, and like, oh, it's in the wrong. And that's when I'm just like, no. But as soon as it's like, everything's working, okay, hi everyone, then I'm happy again. You know, like I've worked tirelessly for this moment, but the moment right before it, when I was like fighting with a patch cord that I didn't know wasn't working, that is me like having a mental breakdown. I
think that basically sums up being a musician. Well, I want to thank you for doing this. This is I always love sitting down and talking to you, but it's nice like getting your different level than talking to other musicians. Like there's, like you said earlier, like you've got your own, even the thought process, the way you think about music, I think it'll help other people like hopefully understand why we are the crazy musicians and why we put ourselves through this. Awesome. Well, we'll catch you guys next time.